Guys, Steven from LOJ here, and we are kicking off a new YouTube video series documenting some of the builds that we do at LOJ Conversions. We actually just left Marlboro, New Jersey. Marlboro Motors is like this divey little skeevy used car dealership, but they had a 2004 Nissan Armada that we just picked up for no other reason than to get parts off of it to support another build that we're starting. Yes, it has a VK56 in it, and no, we're not going to use that because that sucks and we like LS's. But we are going to use a bunch of the suspension parts off of it. What you may or may not know about Armadas and Titans and Frontiers and Xteras and Pathfinders, but they're all kind of like Legos and built on different versions of the same frame, and a lot of the parts all interchange between them. So we actually have a 2005 Nissan Frontier that is the project vehicle, but we're going to be using a bunch of the suspension stuff off of the Armada on the Frontier. So the Frontier we picked up is two-wheel drive. We're going to use front-end components off of the Armada to convert it to four-wheel drive, and when you put the Armada or Titan control arms on a Frontier or Xtera, it actually makes the front end wider, so you gain some width in the vehicle. Off-road guys will say, you know, it's awesome because you get more suspension travel, which is true, but we're not building an off-road truck, we're building a street truck, and we wanted more width for better handling. And then the Armada's actually got independent rear suspension that is really similar to the independent rear suspension that's on a Pathfinder as well, but again, the frames are so similar that you can basically bolt the independent suspension off the Armada under a Frontier, at least in theory. Nobody that I know of has done it. I'm sure somebody out there has. People play with these trucks all the time, but I haven't found anything about it. But I do know that the frames are similar enough that, you know, we should be able to do it and have a four-wheel independent suspension, wide track Frontier pickup truck, and that's going to be fun. But we literally bought this Armada from some crappy dealership. It's beat. I mean, it's in real rough shape, and we bought it cheap as heck just for parts. We're going to take it to the shop, rip everything we need off of it, and then scrap it. You know, that's that. So should be a fun build, and we'll be back to the shop soon. So, it runs 140,000 miles. Oil pressure's good. Perfect truck to completely just tear apart and destroy to build something way cooler. Alright, so now we got all of the front suspension, diff, steering rack, everything ripped off the front of this truck. It's all parts that we're going to use on the Frontier for basically making it wide track, because the Armada, even though the frame is the same width and the mounting points are at the same location as a Frontier, the control arms are actually longer to give the Armadas and Titans a wider front end. So just by bolting this Armada front stuff onto the Frontier, we're going to widen the front track of the Frontier by about 6 inches. And then in the rear, we removed the whole rear subframe, also removed the front mounting points from the frame, because even though the rear of the frame, these are the mounting points right here, even though the rear of the frame on a Frontier and Armada and Xtera and Titan and Pathfinder are all the same shape, like the contour of the frame is the same, the width of the frame is the same. The difference is basically the Titans and Xteras and Frontiers have leaf springs in the rear, and the Pathfinders and Armadas have independent suspension. So they have these mounting points on here, a bump stop for the independent control arms, a mounting point for the shock that's in a different location, this mounting point here that is cut off for the front of the subframe, and then the rear of the subframe bolts up into the frame in 2 locations here. So we've got the whole rear subframe pulled off as an assembly, and basically what we're going to do after we disassemble the whole thing, media blast the whole thing, clean it all up because it's got a lot of surface rust on it, probably powder coat it, get it all reinstalled, well mocked up under the Frontier. We'll bolt those front mounting points to the subframe, stick the subframe under the frame of the Frontier, and then we can weld in the front mounts right where they need to be, and then drill holes for the rear mounts through the Frontier frame and put a backup nut on them to bolt the independent suspension. So then we'll have wider track in the rear as well as independent suspension on the rear of the Frontier. So the only thing we have left to do is to yank the engine and trans out of this thing so that we can then back the trailer on here, drop it down, and take it to the scrap yard. All right, this saga continues.